Well, I hope all of you remember 30 years ago today, Kathryn Bigelow's film Strange Days, written by her. I don't know if they were still married at the time the movie came out, but her former husband, Jimmy C., the great James Cameron, who wrote the film. I believe he wrote it with Jay Cox. I think. I'm not sure. We'll have to get back to that. This movie came out, and for me, this movie holds a special place in my heart because I was the critic at large for Sci-Fi Universe magazine at the time, published by Larry Flint. And the magazine would often get solicited for covers. For instance, one of the great debates when I was writing for the magazine was whether or not Independence Day or The Fifth Element should be on the cover. And I think we had both. They shared a cover. I mean, that was a fucking Sophie's Choice back there in 1996, let me tell you. But anyway, so when this movie came out, I don't know if I was writing for the magazine yet. I'd become friends with Mark Altman because of the magazine, and I got to go to a screening of this because I was a huge both Kathryn Bigelow and James Cameron fan, obviously. I had seen Kathryn Bigelow's first film that stars Willem Dafoe that she co-directed, a biker movie called The Loveless, that I was a fan of, starring Willem Dafoe in one of his early roles. And then, of course, after that, there were the dueling vampire movies, Near Dark and The Lost Boys. And for all of you people, I was a Near Dark boy all the way. Lost Boys was fine, but it was a weightless pop confection. You're eating maggots, Michael. Cry, Little Sister. I know. We all love The Lost Boys. I love The Lost Boys. Near Dark was the far more interesting and far more superior film. Just how old are you, Jesse? Let me put it this way. I fought for the South. Come on. It was great. Half the cast of Aliens, Tangerine Dream score. I mean, it had one of the great shootouts of all time. And you know what? It had one of the great scenes where people went into a bar to get a drink. Unfortunately, those people were vampires, and the people they were drinking were the people at the bar. Or what they were drinking was the people at the bar. Sorry, I fucked that up. But you know what I mean. So when this movie came out, Kathryn Bigelow had made Near Dark. She had made Blue Steel with the great, rest in peace, Ron Silver and Jamie Lee Curtis, and she'd made Point Break. And she was known as a powerhouse female action director. She was also tall and statuesquely beautiful. Not that matters. She just was, and she had a fine arts background. And she was like all of our nerd dream girl. That's what she was. And very excited to see this movie. I saw this movie on the 20th Century Fox lot. I think it's the Zanuck Theater, the Daryl Zanuck Theater. And we all went to see it, and I have to say I was blown away, absolutely blown away when I saw this film. This film came out 3 years on the heels of the LA, or 3 years, maybe 3 years, 92. I always mix up the riots with the Northridge earthquake, but I was there for both. I thought this movie was an incredible science fiction film, but I thought it was an incredibly incendiary Los Angeles movie, and of course, it was about the millennium as well. We really hadn't, we weren't gripped with Y2K panic yet, but it was coming. And this film detailed what would New Year's Eve look like. Of course, as everyone knows, everyone was scared for the clocks to turn over to 2000. But if you're a Stanley Kubrick fan, there's a reason he called his movie 2001. There was no year zero. It's 1 to 10, 11 to 20. I've had this argument for people my entire life. Nobody listens. I don't care. That's why 2001 was 2001. It was the first year of the next millennia. The year 2000 was the end of the 19th century, or the 20th century. Just saying. I know. I'm not going to relitigate that. It's nothing to relitigate. Everyone out there right now is wrong. You know you're wrong. I know you're wrong. We're not going to talk about it. But it was a movie when, everything turned to 2000, which was cool. Now, this film is kind of, in my mind, drifted off into sort of obscurity. I love this movie for so many reasons. I used to follow this band of I guess I forgive me, but I thought of them as a multi-ethnic group of angry women. And it was a band named Strange Fruit. And they fucking kicked ass. I probably saw them, I don't know, 8 or 9 times in Los Angeles, and I'd follow them around. Somebody told me about them, and they had a signature song. I want to say it's called Blue Sky. But they were totally an LA thing. And I would go out and see them at clubs, and whenever they played, I would go out and see them. They showed up. That song is on the soundtrack for Strange Days, which proved how much of an LA movie this was in 1995. I fucking loved everything about this movie. I thought it was incendiary. I thought it was going to be explosive. I thought it was going to capture the imagination of the country, and it was going to become a zeitgeist, kind of the way people are talking about One Battle After Another today, whether it's an Antifa movie, how it's the wrong movie at the wrong time, or maybe it's the right movie at the right time. I thought this was that. And I also love the science fiction aspects of it, which touched upon something that Douglas Trumbull's movie that Bruce Joel Rubin wrote, Brainstorm, brought up in 1983. The idea of being able to record your experiences on electronics and play them back for other people. And the technology that was shown in Brainstorm was similar to the squid technology that was in or depicted in Strange Days. Well, anyway, my novelist friend and essayist and short story writer, Alvaro, I'll get it right one day. But Alvaro wrote a great piece on this, and we somehow were talking about this movie, about how much we both loved it. And he wrote this piece. And by the way, I will be talking about this movie this Sunday on Cinema Gulp's show, probably around 8 o'clock. Cinema Gulp, tune in to Cinema Gulp's show. We're going to talk about this movie more, so you get a different point of view. But I wanted to start this show. The article that I'm about to read is linked in the description, where you can find the tip link. And Alvaro wrote this article. I didn't even know. Of course he wrote an article about this movie, because why wouldn't he? That's how cool he is. So I'm going to read this article, and it comes from Imaginary Papers 4. Imaginary Papers is a quarterly newsletter about science fiction world building, futures thinking, and the unplumbed depths of the imagination. Well, today is the 30th anniversary of the debut of Strange Days at the New York Film Festival. It's 30 years old, and apparently this was an article or a series of articles called Science Fiction Frames, Insights and Analysis Jumping Off from a Single Frame of a Film, a TV Show, or a Video Game by Alvaro Zinus Amaro. So there you go. And here's the frame. And by the way, this is one of the reasons I will love this woman forever. I also love Philo Gant, played by the great Michael Wincott. The cast in this movie is great. Lenny Nero, I shouldn't like him as much as I do, but Ralph Fiennes as Lenny Nero in this movie. Between this character and the character he played in The English Patient, I certainly wanted to be Ralph Fiennes in the 90s. What that says about me, I don't know, because both the character he played, the Count in English Patient, and Lenny Nero are not the most likable guys, nor are they guys anybody should really aspire to, but I loved them. I don't care. Judge me. So here's Alvaro's article. Kathryn Bigelow's cyberpunk noir thriller, 25 years old this October, so you know this was written 5 years ago, is a complex, provocative vision of voyeurism as narcotic amid escalating racial tensions on the eve of the millennium. Flaming cars, militarized police tanks, and helicopter searchlights comprise the visual backdrop. The soundscape consists of profanity, emergency sirens, pulsing 90s electronica, and a grunge overdose. But it's not all brash posturing. 1 hour and 24 minutes in, a black mother watches her young son mingle with friends at a party, light a pair of sparklers, and wave them in tune to the music. She smiles for a moment and then turns around. The mother, Lornette Mason, played by Angela Bassett, is sheltering her friend Lenny Nero, Ralph Fiennes, Nero is a peddler of illegal clips, human experiences recorded from the cerebral cortex of one person and relived, pure and uncut, via the cerebral cortex of another. A former cop, Nero once protected Mace's son Xander during a domestic violence situation. As Mace has watched Nero lose his way, her gratitude, combined with a protective instinct, has matured into something more. Even while chiding him, she calls him a goofball romantic. Nero, however, is consumed by unrequited feelings towards his former girlfriend, Faith, played by the great Juliette Lewis, who sings a song in this movie, and it is absolutely scorching. The sex appeal of Juliette Lewis, if you didn't understand why Brad Pitt was fascinated by her at that time, watch this movie. Before Mace's moment of stillness at the Millennium Party, much loudness and violence has unfolded and more will ensue. Nero has been receiving anonymous blackjack clips, snuff recordings, from a killer who equips his victims with headgear so that they experience their own torture and death through the killer's eyes in real time. Nero and Mace have retrieved a clip that shows the brutal killing of Jericho 1, a black rapper and activist, by white LAPD officers. The murder, if released to the media, is sure to spark riots in the massive downtown 2K party because the clip came from one of Faith's now-deceased friends. Nero believes that she is next on the killer's list. But before history ends and begins again, as the film puts it, we glimpse a possibility of hope in Mace's mid-movie scene. There's something very beautiful or serene at the heart of the film, Bigelow noted in an interview, that's antithetical to the environment, which is grim, brutal, and disturbing. When Mace slowly eases into that wide, heartwarming smile, it's the first time that one of our protagonists expresses uncomplicated joy while fully in the here and now. In Mace's words, this is not playback. It's a fragile juncture. Mace bridges the promise of the future, reflected in her son's spontaneous happiness, and the past that is eating Nero alive. At the same instant that her son is delighting in carefree reality, Nero is wire-tripping the clip of Jericho 1's murder. Mace is stuck in the middle, bound by her affection towards her friend, but uncompromising in her parental responsibilities. The scene's orchestration is splendid. Nero, deep in the house, is trapped in his own virtual world. Xander outside is free, and Mace, standing right by the window, halfway between the two, is on the cusp of liberty, but still constrained. Her act of gazing is worth noting in its own right. Mace remains an observer rather than a participant. You want to watch, or are you going to do? Faith teases Nero in a clip of Happier Days. The question ends up haunting Strange Days' characters and its viewers. Just as the movie's imagined technology superposes victim and perpetrator, Bigelow's narrative makes us accomplices to the voyeurism it denounces. Mace's quiet moment proves transitional, as did Strange Days itself. The film, which Roger Ebert described as a technical tour de force, represents a shift in Bigelow's filmography. Here, the director interrogates the seduction of violence in her previous work. The fetishizing close-ups and smooth glamorizing pans in Near Dark, Blue Steel, and Point Break are replaced by jerky POV sequences which give way to the hyper-realist, quasi-documentarian aesthetics of The Hurt Locker, Zero Dark 30, and Detroit. Observing our social media-saturated world, it's clear that we've failed to heed the film's warning about our predilection for watching others as a way of avoiding being present with ourselves. In hindsight, we can see that with this thoughtful, socially engaged film, America's been my boogeyman for 400 years, Jericho 1 raps early on. Bigelow was affirming that for her, reflexivity had become as important as reflection. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, she's always been, what's really interesting is, she started out as a fine artist and then found her way to film. I mean, she has a great aesthetic sense. One of the coolest things, the shootout in Near Dark, one of the things I love about that, where the vampires are sequestered away in this small little bungalow at this motel complex, and they wind up in a gunfight with the cops, and it's daylight, you know, and they've put foil over the windows, and every time a bullet comes through, a shaft of light comes in, and the vampires are trying to shoot back, but they don't want to get stung by the light and burned. I mean, it's such a brilliantly. The thing about Near Dark is it brings vampirism. It takes all the old tropes, but makes them real, which is one of my favorite things. You know, when somebody does that, no one does it better than Near Dark. And that shootout scene, only Kathryn Bigelow could have delivered that. And there's such cinematic wit in how that scene was done, and even the dialogue, because it's there's a lot of humor and sardonic humor. The vampires are, you know, laughing about their predicament because they've been there before. And that's what, I mean, I think Kathryn Bigelow, she has a lot of humor in her movies that I don't think she gets enough credit for.